Welcome to Software Leaders Uncensored with Steve Taplin.
Welcome to Software Leaders Uncensored, where tech leaders drop the filters and just tell it like it is. I'm your host, Steve Taplin, a serial technology entrepreneur who's launched 30 companies, failed at 20 of those, but scaled 10 of those to success. And I turned that roller coaster of a ride into my book. It's called Fail Hard, Win Big. And this is where I teach people how you need to turn failure into your biggest competitive advantage and how custom software played a defining role in every company win. Now I'm the CEO and founder of Sonatafy Technology. We are a nearshore software engineering firm helping existing engineering teams scale. And today I am joined by Peter Horadan, who is a product and engineering executive, having worked at big names like Microsoft, SAP, and Sage. He's been a founder, and now he is the CEO at Vouched. Peter, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. If you would, take a few minutes and walk our listeners through the journey of your career.
Yeah, you bet. So I'm CEO at Vouched. We help people identify themselves online to access essential services. So for example, when you open a bank account online or see your doctor online, we check your ID and make sure that the institution knows exactly who you are and meets regulatory requirements. It's funny, I've made a career of automating what other people think of as really boring back-end business services. I was at Microsoft in the 90s. That before the internet is when I joined the company, and then there was no internet, then there was an internet. I was working with banks at the time, and then we noticed that every single bank was trying to do the same thing online. They were trying to figure out, how do I make a website that you can see your balances, pay your bills? It all seems standard today, but back then it was brand new. So we created a server product that helps banks do that. And I led the engineering to create that product. And we sold that to about 300 banks. And then Bill decided it was way too vertical. And so he decided to spin it out into a company called Carillion. And I went with that. I joined Carillion, and we took that to IPO in 1999. So that was my first experience with startups. And ever since then, I've been hooked.
That's a good one.
Yeah. It was, we got in before the door, the last great .com IPO. Then I was at, I joined Concur Technologies in the 2000s. Back it was expense reports. So we automated management of expense reports. And you might think, well, what's hard about that? Well, back in those days, people would just take a spreadsheet and print it out. You'd staple your receipts to these printed out spreadsheet. You'd put it in an inner office envelope. I don't know if you remember these. It's like the yellow manila envelope with a little string, and you tie the string together. And you can see where it had been before, and you crossed out the last person, you wrote the next, you wrote accounting. You put it in the inner office mail. Someone in accounting would open it, read it, then they'd enter it, and then they'd put it in a box. They'd give that box to Iron Mountain, and then Iron Mountain would drop the box in the salt mine for 7 years in case the IRS asked for it. That's how things used to be done. Now, you just take a picture of it with your cell phone and everything's electronic. So ushering that in created a ton of value, and that's what we did at Concur. I joined the company. The stock price was at 25 cents. I left the company. The stock price was at $25. So that's a 100x increase in about 5 years by creating that. We were the number one expense management.
You were 2 for 2 there in your career so far. That's Hall of Fame material.
Yeah, exactly. And then Concur was eventually acquired for $8 billion by SAP. You might think expense reports, how interesting is that? Well, it's $8 billion worth of interesting. And then I went to Avalara in the 2010s. I was CTO, global head of engineering. It was a very large 500-person organization. Again, people think, what's hard about sales tax? Just multiply by 10%. That doesn't sound very hard. But actually, when you get into it, it's a phenomenally complicated area. There's 11,000 taxing jurisdictions in the United States. There's every state, county, city. Then there's transit district, tourism district, stadium district, whatever. All of these entities have the ability to change the way that sales tax is collected in their boundaries. You have to know what all those districts are. You have to know the boundaries of them. You have to know the rates, all the special rules. There's all kinds of ifs, ands, or buts. Then you got to file forms. It's funny, in Louisiana, you have to file a unique form in all 72 parishes. So if you do business in Louisiana, you might be filing 72 different forms a month. It's all this crazy stuff. Anyway, we automated all that. Also, number one in the world, took that to IPO. And at the peak, had about a $16 billion valuation. So you can see there's a theme here. There's a lot of money in these really boring back-end business services. And the reason is pretty clear. The market is every company in the world. Every business has these common problems. It's an essential business process, so you cannot not do it. If there's a downturn or something, it's not something that can be cut. And the third thing is that really there's an ROI that's created. You actually make the business better when you improve these processes. They can actually calculate a return on their investment, which is a great way to sell, right? You're
Sure.
selling painkillers, not vitamins. So then I created a company with a co-founder in 2019 called Lockstep. That was my first from scratch startup, my first stint as CEO. And we focused on accounting automation, which is the emails that go back and forth between accounting teams every day. Another little arcane problem, but every business in the world does business with other businesses. As soon as that happens, the accounting teams at those two companies need to work together to balance the books,
Hmm.
right? If you're a customer, your outstanding balance that you need to pay is the same as the outstanding balance that the business expects to receive. Those numbers need to match. Well, how do we do that? Well, we do that by taking data from one system, the vendor, printing it into a PDF as an invoice, sticking the invoice in an email, sending the email to some human being, the wrong human being who's not in accounting, right? Like we've received these emails, right? You're not in accounting. I'm not in accounting. Why are you sending this invoice to me? So they hope we forward it to the right person who is in accounting, who will open, read it, and hand enter it on the other end. So this wastes a ton of time with accounting teams. And there's a whole bunch more than that. There's when you do the payment, you need trade credit, you need to balance at the end of the month. All of these workflows happen in email. And we started that company off to a really strong start. And then along came Sage just 3 years later, loved what we were doing and purchased the company. They made us a terrific offer and we're a great company to work with. And that is now a part of Sage's overall plan for automating accounting workflows between companies. So that was a great experience as well. And I finished my time at Sage and then joined Vouch, where I really believe that identity is the next interesting area of automation. There's two things coming to the world of identity. They're going to change how all of us work together. And we're excited to be leading the way at Sage. Pardon me, at Vouched.
Well, I see why Vouch brought you on.
Yeah.
Everything he touches turns to gold. I love it.
Yeah.
I
No, it's
love it. I'm only batting 333. So that's phenomenal. Thank you for sharing that story. Now, you're not the founder of Vouched. You were brought in as CEO,
I was.
correct? And how did you get that role? You know, and I know people always like to hear this because we all know applying online usually doesn't do anything.
Right. Yeah, right. So, I mean, listen, one of the greatest moves I made was going from engineering leader to CEO. And I always felt like, well, I'm a good number two and I'm great at taking the CEO strategy and then figuring out, okay, how do we go build that software, go implement that? And I never really thought that I had what it took to be a CEO. And then I was talking to somebody who'd invested in a bunch of companies, and the person was saying, I write checks to people who are way less capable than you all the time. Really, you could absolutely be CEO, and I don't see why you don't go start a company. And honestly, that was great advice because it led to me, starting with a co-founder, starting Lockstep, and that was a great reward. I mean, certainly you own a lot more of the company when you start the company, and it's a lot more fun because you can make the company what you want it to be. You don't it's you call all the shots. And
You're preaching to the choir with me here.
so it was a lot more fun and it let me build the company the way I wanted it built and approach the business the way I wanted to approach it. And it turned out to be a great result and a great exit for me. In terms of how to get the spot at Vouched, I was looking around actually at what do I want to do? Do I want to start another company? Do I want to maybe buy a company? And then someone who was on my board at Lockstep at the company that I founded and who had that great exit knew I was looking. It was about a year and a half later, and I'd finished up my time at the company that acquired us and said, hey, you really got to talk to Vouched. It's a pretty interesting company. And once people found out that I was looking around and on the market, I actually got a pretty strong amount of inbound. So I would say, applying online, you need to follow that up with reaching out to your network and saying, who do you know who's doing interesting things and who should I be talking to? As well as go, if there's a job that you want, go make a personal connection. I mean, for me as CEO, it's pretty rare that somebody reaches out to me and says, hey, I'm really interested in where I've watched a few of your podcasts or I see what you're doing. I'm really interested in being a part of it. Can I talk to you about joining? I will absolutely respond to those people. And it's funny, there's an AI pattern. You can tell that somebody somewhere has released some AI thing that is writing these letters because I'll get I'm sure you do as well. I'll get 10 a week of it's all the exact same pattern. And you're like, okay, that one doesn't count because that's some robo process. But if you write a real personal letter or make some real outreach or find a way to get introduced, I will always respond to that. So if there's something where the online application hasn't worked, go find the person. See either who do you know who can introduce you, or just cold reach out to the person and just write a personal note saying, here's why I want to work at your company.
I love it. In my book, I talk about how I've always sought out mentors and people who have done something that I want to do.
Yeah.
I've always had the mindset of you don't have to be, and now I'm aging myself. The younger generation often doesn't get this, but you don't have to be McDonald's and create everything new. You could be Burger King and just watch McDonald's and follow them and only do what works. And so I've
Right.
kind of lived by that philosophy. So the first question I get is, well, how do you get these mentors? How do you do this? And I had the same response as you. When you take a genuine interest in somebody, you do your research and you do a good outreach. Smart people, accomplished people, unless they inherited it and are ungrateful people, will love helping other people that show the initiative, that show promise. And so I love that you said that. And I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Yeah, that's really true. One of the one of the greatest things that happens when you have a career and you've been managing people, someone will come up to you and say, "Hey, that advice you gave me 10 years ago, changed my career, made all the difference for me." And I'm thinking in my head, who are you? I'm sorry. You might not remember even that the person worked for you, and somehow something that you did influenced them. So yeah, and listen, there's an anti-pattern right now of AI tooling that creates these seemingly genuine emails that just aren't, like I was researching companies and so impressed with yours. And you're just like, okay, obviously it's an AI. But if you do it genuinely, I always respond to those.
Awesome. So,
Yeah.
Peter, tell us about some current projects that you're working on at Vouched. Some good cutting edge stuff.
Yeah. Well, listen, it's an incredibly exciting time to be working in the field of identity. And what I've always looked for, I mean, one of the things that led to those successes is what is an industry that's about to experience a really big change? Because big changes lead to lots of businesses making a buying decision, which leads to lots of opportunity and creates great outcomes. And identity is the next thing. So how often do people say, "Oh, just send me a photocopy of your driver's license"? And we are so low tech and manual in the world of identity these days, and that is all about to change with two big things that are coming. You can get a fake photocopied driver's license online for $2. I can't believe people will hire a remote employee, say, "Send me your photocopied driver's license." They'll accept it as a form of ID. And then the person goes to the company, steals all the internal information and leaves. And they realize, wait a minute, this is a fake identity. We don't even know who that was. That happens all the time.
More and more, and especially in the software engineering space, that's a real problem.
No, it really is. People will get 2, 3 4 jobs. They'll create a fake profile. They'll show up. They'll do very little, but it just takes time to let go of them. And your company's lost a lot before you figure out this isn't even a real person. Those happen to people all the time. I could give you a lot more stories too. So here are the two things that are coming that has me really excited. So the first is mobile driver's license, or also called digital ID. So what this is when the state issues your driver's license, you'll still get the piece of plastic you keep in your wallet, but you're also going to get a digital version that lives on your phone. And what's different about this, on the one hand, you can leave your plastic piece of, thing in your wallet at home, so that's great, but it's actually far more functional than that. So this is a digitally signed document that lives on your phone. So the ability to fake the ID or to make to either modify it or to create a completely new fake ID is completely gone. It's cryptographically signed. You can trace it all the way back to the state certificate. There's no ability to modify this ID. This is going to be tremendous because, to be frank, it's actually fairly easy to get a fake physical ID and or to modify an ID, especially if you're trying to use it online. And we've developed at Vouched a lot of methods for detecting this, but it's always still a probability when you're trying to identify someone online. Even after you've asked for their ID, it's still a probability that the person is who they say they are, as opposed to a certainty. With mobile driver's licenses and digital IDs, it actually becomes a certainty because the state has signed that. And
Now,
you
how,
must,
how far away do you think that is?
yeah, well, it's going to be
And
within the
I'm
next
sure
2
each
years.
state will be very different.
Yeah, it's going to be within 2 years. So 7 states are already issuing digital IDs. That includes California, New York State, 7% of all people with an ID already have a mobile driver's license. And the prediction is by the end of next year, it'll be 30%. And by the end of 2027, it'll be about 50%. So we're within about 2 years of getting to that tipping point where more people have it than don't. And now, in order to use this digital ID, you got to pull your phone out and you got to put your thumbprint on it or do a face print. You must use that biometric. So in that way, nobody can take your phone and have stolen your ID. And then the other thing about them, it's really convenient to use online. The browser can just say, would you like to provide your digital ID to whatever this website is? Maybe it's a merchant or maybe it's an airline or whatever. And you can choose whether to or not. And then you can also choose what to share. You can share just your age and nothing else. And it's a zero knowledge proof that you are of a certain age. It's going to be very useful to some kind of businesses. You can also choose to share, your full name, full address, and so on. Your phone comes alive. You put your thumbprint on. The phone creates an attestation that your digital driver's license has been used to sign the specific provisioning of a license to this website. It then goes to the website and you're done. And it's 100% certain proof you're you. So this is a revolution in identity because
And how is Vouched gearing up for this trend?
yeah, well, we're making it easy to do. So today you have to support every state individually. Every state has a different wallet. Those all need to be implemented individually. So imagine implementing 50 different wallets once all states support this. 30 states have announced that support is coming. There are some common wallets like the Apple Wallet or Google Wallet, but first of all, they don't support every state. Also, you have to support both of them and the Samsung wallet. Like people might be using their state wallet, they might be using a common wallet. Who knows? You need to support them all. If you want to support people from Europe, there's 27 member nations in the EU. The EU has a regulation that all member nations must support this. Guess how many different wallets there's going to be?
Could it
27.
just
Did
be
you guess
one?
27? Yeah, 27. So we're already at like 80 wallets. So we support all of those for you. It's very much like at Avalara, where you can do it yourself if you want. It's all public from the government, but doing it is very hard, and it's much better to have a platform that does.
So are you supporting the states in creating that or the end users in using it?
We support we're not writing the wallet software. We are supporting the end users who want to use it. It's really the service providers who want to accept an ID, right? Let's say you're an airline and you need to identify people on the way in, or a bank. Today you're doing some way of verifying identity. Now you can just say, can you just show me your digital ID? It's the same. We pull out our physical ID all the time to show it to people. If you're at a baseball game and you're thirsty, you want a beer, you show them your complete stranger, your physical ID, just because you want this beer. I think it's going to become as common to do that with your digital ID in the future. The
Interesting.
standards bodies have been very wise. There's no phone home. There's no phone home when you use your physical ID, so that people are concerned about tracking. There'll be no tracking. The standards specifically state that you don't tell this government whenever your ID is used. You have everything you need to show your ID lives on this phone, and the phone can, as many times as it wants, show that digital ID without notifying the government. So I'll give you an
Love
example,
it.
like password change. How
No.
annoying is password change these days when you have to use 6 digits, you got to dig them out of your email, and that's not very secure because if someone's in your email, they can completely own you by just changing your password, intercept the 6 digits, and so on. And even some AIs now, I don't know if you've used Comet Browser or other agentic browsers that try to log in as you. They even get you to give it the 6 digits so that the AI can pretend to be you, without the second factor. So it's not very secure. And when you're changing a password, phishing fraud is the number one vector of fraud, even now, even in 2025. You get a bad email that, changes your password in a bad way, or that you get your password to a third party. It's a number one fraud vector responsible for hundreds of billions of losses. I predict that within 10 years, all password changes, for any service that matters, will say, hey, could you just show me your ID? And you just do it on your phone and you're done. It's 100% proof that you own this account and that you can change the password. That's what we do in the real world. If you lose your hotel room key and you need a new one, that's like a password change on your hotel room, right? So how does that work? You go to the hotel room front desk, you say, I need a new hotel room key. They don't say, great, I'm going to send 6 digits to your cell phone. Tell me what that is. I'll give you a new key, right? They don't say, I'm going to do a credit report check. So here's 4 addresses. Which one of these did you live at 5 years ago? And they certainly don't give you 9 pictures and say, if you can properly circle all the fire hydrants, we'll give you a new hotel room key. So why are we doing that online? No, it's because there's this stigma around presenting your physical ID online. But the
I love
digital
it.
ID is so easy. I think people are going to use it.
Talk about your software engineering team that's implementing these great tools for you. How many engineers you have, where you're located, the work model.
Yeah, we have a great team. So we have about 10 engineers, and they're all remote, but we're all in the US. And so when we get together twice a year in person, we're very strong believers in building a strong remote culture. I think remote work is great for people who just want to get stuff done. I think if you're already driven and motivated and excited about the project that you're working on, remote works great because you can just get up and get to it and on your schedule that works for you. But we still need to create face-to-face relationships. We want to have a strong team, a team that has each other's back, where there's a lot of where it's high trust and high cohesion. And really, the only way to do that is in person. And so every 6 months, we'll get the entire company together. There's about 40 of us total at this point. We get the whole company together, and we all mainly the main goal is socializing. Really, the main goal is to do things. We do obviously have presentations and talks and workshops, but the main goal is let's have an experience together that builds those face-to-face relationships that sustain us for the next 6 months.
It's funny, but I'm sure you have to as well. We always have to remind the younger generation that prior to the pandemic, you only worked for home if you were a top performer that
Yeah.
proved the ability to get stuff done. Now everybody expects it. And I'm a big fan of the remote culture. As leaders, we have to work 10 times harder to create a culture in the remote world than we do in the office. And so I'm very big on that as well. And you got to do a lot of other things to make sure you're keeping a culture while everybody's remote.
Oh, that's right. And there's something for sure that's lost. And I talked to our sons, my wife and I sons about it. When I started in my career at Microsoft, you definitely worked in the office, and often you slept in the office. And we felt like we were changing the world and, making good money at the same time. And you were really driven by your projects. And I made a lot of friends in the office. And we also, when you had a project, you don't want to have a death march where you're working around the clock for too long. But when we did need to push to get a project or a milestone out the door, the company would bring in dinner and we would all eat dinner, at 6 o'clock in some conference room, there'd be dinner and we'd all sit there and eat dinner together. And you made a lot of friends that way. And you really drove a lot of cohesion on your team. You could sort of look around the room. We're all here, like coding together. And it led to a feeling of we're all in this together. And when you're remote, that gets lost. You don't see anyone else at their desk working. And yeah, sure they're
At
on
least not
Slack.
three-dimensionally.
Yeah, exactly. And sure they're on Slack and sure, we sit here and we look at these rectangle. It's funny how much time you spend looking at the exact same rectangle on your monitor all day long, right? The wherever you place the monitor for Zoom, like half your life is spent just staring at that one little piece of your monitor.
I understand.
But in the old day, like let me give you an example. End of sprint retrospectives. There is such a difference between an in-person one and a remote one. On the in-person one, you're in some conference room. There's glass maybe to the hallway. People are walking by, seeing something's going on in there. Someone will demo a feature. We just got something to work that didn't work before. We got a great UI. People will clap. People are like, yeah, or when people say that's what I did this time, they'll get a response. There's an audio response, and people are supporting each other in a very physical way. And people walking by the hall might go, "What's going on in there?" And like just poke open the door and say, "Huh, I'm going to watch this demo too." You know, we've the in-person demos are really powerful that way. And
Uh, Definitely agree.
yeah, and when you do it online, when you do it the end of sprint retrospect or with the end of sprint demo online, it's not the same at all. It's like zipped,
People are on Slack, they're doing emails, that you have
right?
maybe 50% of their attention.
Right. And people might do that heart emoji thing where like the heart comes up from the bottom of the, depending on your meeting software, you might have a thumbs up. But it's not nearly the same as that kind of physical feeling of everybody. So something's definitely lost in both in forming my greatest friends are the friends that I made working in offices, even still now. And so making friends, cohesion and morale, and just all sort of like we're all pulling this heavy ox cart up a hill together. And just that sense of being on the same team, it's very hard to replicate that remotely. And so it's going to be very interesting to see how things evolve, especially as I have a generation coming up only doing remote work, because all of those connections are not there. And how do those get replaced? I don't know a good answer to that. Do you?
I don't either. And
Yeah,
I worry about the younger generation because they need that in office experience, learn how to network, learn about company politics. I mean, stuff you're not going to learn remotely
right.
to advance their careers. So it is definitely a challenge. Prior to recording, Peter, you were telling me about some of your top challenges you're dealing with.
Right.
One of them, which every engineering leader and CEO is having this challenge of figuring out how to best deploy AI when building software. Talk about the challenges you're having there.
Yeah, it's been interesting. I mean, you use some of the AI tools today to create a toy application, and you're just blown away by just how well the AI can do at creating an application from scratch. But then you try to play with it, or you put it in a stress scenario, try to scale it, and it doesn't really work. And so then you get to a point of, okay, well, how can we really use AI in development to build, industrial strength, scalable applications? And, at Vouch, we have a code base that stretches back over 6 or 7 years. And we're finding a difficulty getting AI tooling to be able to write good code, understanding all the arcane knowledge that you need to know to understand the code that exists today. And so it requires a lot more human supervision, and it's a lot lessful to humans than we want it to be. And so so for me as a CEO, it's really easy for me to just beat the drum and say, okay, all of us, everybody here should be 10x engineers now. Like, we're all professional software engineers. This is our profession, and our profession is being changed by this new tool that's come along that can make everyone a 10x engineer. And if you're a 10x engineer, maybe it makes you a 100x engineer. So we all need to be 10x engineers. And the team comes back and says, "Well, wait a minute. When I use any of the good AI coding tools today, they just keep making mistakes and introducing new bugs because they don't understand." And so we're experimenting with larger context windows, where we're continuing to try to find a better solution to this problem. But ultimately, it's going to be very interesting to see what role does AI play and what role do people play in large, complex code bases.
I do. You look at the past 2 years as agentic AI has become mainstream. And, 2 years ago it was, we're not going to need software engineers anymore.
Right.
And, I think the last 5, 6 months, the industry, the real people in the industry, like yourself, the ones on this show that I get the honor of talking to every day, are like, all right, there's definitely a good use case for AI. And in the right scenario with the right tools, you can get a solid 10 to 20% productivity in what you're doing, depending on what you're doing, because you pointed out a very challenging example of some legacy code that the AI tools aren't trained on. I have found, the ones who are making outrageous claims of the productivity, that when you peel the onion a little bit, we all know you could spin up a prototype really quickly. Is that gonna scale? Is that gonna give the same results every time? That's kind of the issues. So I like to break it down into, what is real, what real tech leaders are experiencing, and kind of go a little past the hype. I know it's not that sexy to say 10 to 20% productivity, but um, and it's definitely going to increase, and the roles are definitely going to shift. Agree or disagree?
One of the things I'm fascinated by right now is I want to make sure that new coders continue to have a thorough understanding of how the system works. I have a 12-year-old son, and he's learning to code, and I'm pushing him to learn assembly language and to actually program the microprocessor
So
itself.
you're really punishing him.
Well, yeah, exactly. So he's using Scratch and stuff and making games. And I'm like, okay, let's talk about what exactly is the clock cycle on a microprocessor. Like, when they say it's a 4 gigahertz microprocessor, that means 4 billion times a second something happens. What is it that's happening? And so I'm really trying to get him to think about what happens on every clock cycle, and what is an assembly instruction, and how does a microprocessor execute it, and what is it exactly doing? Because you have to have that foundation of how computers work. You have to when I was a kid, when I was young, I would read Byte magazine cover to cover. Do you remember? I don't know. Did you do
I
this?
do.
There were programs with your Commodore 64. There were programs in the back that you could actually type in. You had to type the hex. It's like 2 pages long. You type it in, and you could play Pong or something. And you know, doing that gave me a great foundation in here's exactly how the system works. And you need that deep understanding in order to write any complex system. Because if you write a complex system and you're expecting to just skate across the top and just understand it at just only a skin deep level, like I'll let AI worry about all the other details and I'll just tell it what I want and AI can figure out the rest. We're not there yet. I don't know, maybe we'll be there in Captain Kirk's times, but we're certainly not there. And it doesn't seem like we're anywhere remote close to being there yet. The AI will happily go on and say that it's right and create a system that simply won't scale or simply, won't meet your needs or won't handle your error cases or things like that. So we still need human beings who understand all of the details and who thought deeply about why do these other systems work this way? What do I need to think about in order to create a highly reliable system? And that is essential. And I'm a little worried that people are just too easy to say, well, I'll tell the AI what I need and it'll figure it out. It's like, no, we humans still need to keep understanding things to a deep level.
Nope. Sometimes some kids with podcasts out of their parents' basement like to say that you could build enterprise scale applications that way, but that's not the real world that I'm seeing.
Yeah, we have not seen that. We have
So
not
I
seen
know
that.
you were talking about another challenge of your company is rolling out additional areas like your agentic ID and the challenges of having kind of pre-revenue business lines that you're investing in. Please expand on that.
Yeah. So another thing that we're really excited about, this is really the second major change. So digital IDs is one, but the second major change is we are now starting to have non-human actors who are taking actions on behalf of humans. This is different from bots. We used to have bots and scrapers with, if you ran a website, like in the middle of the night, along would come the Google bot that would scrape your website so that it could, offer your stuff in search results, or maybe your competitor screen scrapes all the prices off your site, or who knows. Those are bots. We've had those for a long time. But now, starting this summer, we're seeing AIs that will not just do analysis for you. When ChatGPT and similar tools started, you could say, could you make a plan for a vacation for me? And it would say, sure. And it would like write it out. Like, here's where you should go, and here's the beach you should sit on, and here's the restaurant and everything else. But it wouldn't do anything beyond that. And that, of course, that was useful. But it was up to you to then go book the vacation, to call the airline, to call the hotel, and so on. Now, agents, AIs, are starting to have something called agent mode, where they'll go do that for you. And so we see this in ChatGPT agent mode. We see this in the Comet browser by Perplexity. Perplexity is interesting, where you actually have a full browser with an AI on the side. And you could just say to the AI, go book my hotel reservation, please. And they'll say, sure. It goes to the hotel's website. It gets to the login page, lets you log in, sits there and waits patiently while you log in. And if you get a two-factor auth, it waits like, please enter the two-factor auth. You enter the two-factor auth. Now you're logged in. And now it says, I'll take it from here. And you can watch while it goes click, 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 and clicks all over the website to, find you the right room and make a reservation. So, I mean, on the one hand, this is amazing, right? All of us now have our own private administrative assistant who can go and do all this drudge work for us. Awesome. Like I'm excited by that. However, the identity scenario really needs a new approach. This will never work. The idea that effectively what we're doing is we're just giving our username and password out to an AI and letting it do stuff on behalf of us. The service provider, the hotel or the airline, can't tell the difference between something an agent did and something a human did. The service provider can't tell if the human authorized this action that's happening right now. It has no way of knowing that. All it knows is a session is open, it has the credentials of the human, and it's doing stuff. So this is a security nightmare. So, I mean, we've spent decades teaching the computer users of the world, do not ever give your username and password to any third party, right? Very, very common advice. In fact, it's a
Yep.
firing offense at many companies. If you were to give out your corporate credentials to some third party, usually you get fired for that, or at least you get a strongly worded, don't ever do that. So, but that's exactly what we're doing. These agents can see your username and password. You're typing it in their window with their URL on top. Now they say they won't do anything bad with it, but that's not a security strategy, right? The
Right.
security strategy.
All right. There's a disclaimer there that they won't do anything. Okay, we're safe.
Yeah, don't worry, nothing bad will happen. And listen, these I am not casting any aspersion on any company. They have the best of intentions. They're doing the best job, and they are. I'm not saying anyone has a bad intention. However, as a security practice, the idea, if you're a CISO of a company, the idea that your employees are giving their username and passwords to AIs, and those AIs are logging into your corporate systems, like your sales management system, your accounting system, your bank system, in order to make their jobs easier is totally unacceptable.
Yep.
Because now it's different if the company bought the AI and the company's using it internally, but that's not what's happening here. These are third-party AIs that the company hasn't blessed. And so that can never happen. So we need a new identity framework. We saw this coming last November. We shipped our identity framework in May. It's called the Know Your Agent platform. And we have a specification called MCPI that redefines how this will work. One thing that's interesting about having gray hair like I do, you've seen a lot of things before. This same problem happened to banks in the early 2000s. I was working in that industry where banks would get a website up there. You could see your transactions. Amazing. I want to download those transactions so that I can stick them into my accounting software. How do you do that? Banks didn't offer that feature. So a bunch of screen scraping services came along like Yodlee and others where you would give them username and password. They'd log into your bank. They kept the templates of all the different banks and what their website looked like. They'd screen scrape your data and they'd give it to you as a file. This was a really valuable service. Those companies did really well at the time. But then the banks realized, hey, wait a minute. Yodlee has the username and password of millions of our users, and you can use that to transfer funds, and like this can't happen. And so we invented OAuth 2.0, the process that many are familiar with today, where like if you're in a budgeting tool or something and you want to connect to your bank, it'll open a new window, which is your bank's website. And the bank will say, this budgeting tool wants to see your checking or savings or whatever. Will you allow it? And you can say yes or no. And it's fine grained. You can say yes to checkings, but no to savings. And what's different about that than the budgeting tool just having your username and password? Well, first of all, the tool is identified separately as a third party, and it has an identity, and we can track, is this a good or a bad thing, right? Does this work well or poorly? Second, the human showed up and explicitly granted permission. And that you can audit that, you can track that was done. You can create a log of when did this human grant this permission. It's fine-grained and it's revocable. You can go back to the bank and say, shut off the budgeting tool.
Mhm.
You can't do that if you've given the budgeting tool your username and password. So it's different in a fundamental way. And we really need that for every single website right now. So what happens is websites are going to realize, like, wait a minute, my users are giving their username and password to these third parties who are logging in and doing stuff. And it's not just going to be the big AI companies. We are tracking at Vouched already 800 agentic AIs that are convincing users to give their username and password and log in on behalf of them. So this is a security nightmare because I'm sure a lot of them are good, but some of them are bad, and there's going to be a whole lot of bad ones. Fraudsters are going to figure out pretty quickly, oh, if I just create an AI that says, hey, I'll book your travel for you, people will give me their username and password. I can use that to book fake plane tickets and make a fortune. That is absolutely coming soon. So we
Crazy.
need this better way, and that's what we've rolled out with the Know Your Agent platform. We're very excited about it. So what happens is the AI, you're in the AI. Actually, let me back up. Here's what's going to happen. Every single website that has a login button is going to go through this learning step. If you're listening and your website has a login button, here's a preview of your future. You're going to realize this login button that we designed for humans, now there's a bunch of non-humans coming through my login button and doing stuff on behalf of those humans. Is that okay with me or not? Well, before I decide that, what I'm going to notice is that these agents are interacting with my website through HTML, through a medium which was designed for humans. And the agents are having to like execute JavaScript and look at the screen and try to parse it and everything else. This is like the least efficient way imaginable for that agent to execute the functions of your site. Like, let's say your e-commerce, the functions of your site are add to cart, view products, view product detail, add to cart, initiate a purchase, right? Whatever. Those are the functions of your site. Doing that through an HTML UI is like the least efficient way imaginable. So then you think, well, what's a more efficient way that since I have these non-humans showing up, how can I support them more efficiently? Well, Anthropic released a spec for that called MCP, Model Context Protocol. It's a great way to do it. So then you're going to decide, okay, I need an MCP server so that these non-humans can have a way to execute these functions. So you build your MCP server, great. But now you're like, well, wait a minute. Let's say the agent wants to buy something for one of my customers. How's it going to do that? How's the agent going to buy something for my customer? Today's answer is the customer gives a username and password to the agent. That will never work, okay? Because it's fraud city, right? Because what's going to happen is soon you'll have all these AIs that have the username and passwords of all of your human users. Some of those are going to start, there might be a breach or somebody creates a bad agent and they're going to start to do a ton of fraud. And I think we're going to learn a lot about this holiday shopping season because there's starting to be a lot of AI shopping agents. So then you say, okay, I have an MCP server. Now what I need is a way for the humans to say, allow this AI to come in through the MCP server and do stuff for me. And that's going to lead to the protocol that I just described. We are calling it MCPI. It's a free and open specification that we've released to the community. Several standards bodies are looking at it, and it allows for that thing that the banking industry pioneered 20 years ago to be used for every website, where you come in with the AI goes to the MCP server. It gets a message back effectively that says, you're not authorized. Your human needs to go to this URL and authorize you. The AI can then immediately redirect the human to that URL. The URL is at the service provider site, the bank or the airline or whatever. So that the URL on top is the bank or the airline. They can say, this AI agent wants to work for you. Will you allow it? And you go from there.
Exciting stuff. Peter, we are out of time.
Okay.
Thank you so much for getting Uncensored with us today. Appreciate you sharing about your background and giving some good insight as to the identity problems and challenges that are coming here. And it'll be exciting to keep tracking your company's progress as being a leading provider on helping those. Before we wrap, what's your no BS advice for today's tech leaders who are trying to build, scale, or even just survive?
I say if you have at all have an itch to start a company, start a company. It's the greatest thing you'll ever do. You have all the skills you need to go do it, and it's an incredibly rewarding path.
And you got my vote there, to say the least. Peter, thank you so much. That's it for this episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. I'm Steve Taplin. If you enjoyed the show, go ahead and subscribe. If you didn't enjoy it, well, you heard all the security and identity stuff Peter was talking about. Are you sure you want to be on our bad side here? I'm just teasing. We'll just send it to your competitors. Probably the edge they're looking for. Remember to fail hard, win big, and always build what matters. See you next time.
Thank you.
That's a wrap. Another great episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. Thank you guys so much for listening. I really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun doing this show. I love talking with great tech leaders. As a side note, if you're interested, check out my new book, Fail Hard, Win Big. This is the story of how I built 30 companies, failed on 20, and turned 10 into multi-million-dollar wins. The common thread with all of them was custom software. Also, if you need software development help out there, my company, Sonatafy Technology, we deliver world-class software development engineers out of Latin America. We have a solid track record of helping companies launch better products and faster. Thanks again for listening. Appreciate it and appreciate you.